Let's do some spooky upcycles. I have this candlestick that we're gonna make look rusty. We're gonna use some Mod Podge and I'm gonna put the Mod Podge wherever that candlestick would have naturally rusted. Then we're going to sprinkle on some cinnamon. Yes, cinnamon, and it makes it look rusty. We're gonna set that aside and let it dry. Now we're going to customize a napkin so we can put it on our candle. I've printed this on my LaserJet printer on 1 ply of a napkin, and we're going to put it down on a piece of wax paper. We're going to put it on the candle, wrap it up in the wax paper, waxy side in, and then we're gonna gather it up nice and tight, and we're gonna use our heat gun. You can also use a hair dryer. Melt it until the wax goes right through that napkin, and we've customized a candle. Burn the candle down until you can fit a votive in it and you're ready to go. Now we're gonna brush off all of that extra cinnamon and then seal it up with some matte polyacrylic sealer. And this is what I created. We're gonna upcycle a glass jar from the recycling bin and make it spooky. I've got some air dry clay. I'm rolling it out about 1/4 of an inch thick. I gave my glass jar a light spritz of spray paint so the clay would adhere better, and I'm just pushing it all over the whole jar until it's completely covered. Set it aside for 24 hours, let it dry. It's gonna crack, that's exactly what we want. I then got some toilet paper and I decoupaged it so we could keep the clay all together. I printed off this poison label, coffee stained it, then I went back and I coffee stained that whole jar too on top of the decoupaged toilet paper. And then I'm going to decoupage on that label. Wanted to make the edges a little bit distressed, so I added some ink, got out my Mod Podge mat, put a light coat on the back of that label, put it on the jar, and this is what I created. I had an old piece of barn board and a scrap piece of pallet wood. This is what I created with my Mod Podge reverse graphics. All you need is to print your graphics on a LaserJet printer and a little bit of Mod Podge, and you can make one of these. I found these wooden cutout bats at a yard sale this summer, and I knew I had to tuck them away and turn them into some Halloween signs. I painted this piece of scrap wood with some white chalk paint, and then I just flicked some green chalk paint all over it. I'm gonna do my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer on this sign. Printed off the graphics on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text, let it sit for 24 hours, and then rubbed off all of the paper with a little bit of water the next day. And then I added some red acrylic paint wherever there was little droplets of blood in the graphic. I think it finished it off fantastic. Let it dry completely, and then I sealed it up with some polyacrylic sealer. I found this old spring in my stash. I'm adding it to the top to hang on our sign, and this is what I created. If you love a glass of wine every once in a while, don't throw out those wine bottles, because I'm going to show you how you can turn them into beautiful Halloween decor. Candy corn is one of my favorite treats at Halloween time, and we're going to turn these wine bottles into beautiful candy corn decor. I'm painting them with some acrylic paint, doing a white, a yellow, and then an orange, and we've got some tags that I'm going to add to the wine bottles. I've cut them out of some scrap wood, adding some of my Mod Podge graphics, adding a little bit of twine to the top, and we're going to put a little burlap bow on them too. I think that'll look really cute. I've let the graphics sit for 24 hours. I'm rubbing off the paper with a little bit of water. Gonna tie them onto the wine bottles, and these turned out absolutely adorable. They're gonna look fantastic with my Halloween decor this season. This morning I had a stroke of creativity when I realized I could repurpose some used coffee grounds from my coffee maker. As I rummaged through my craft supplies, I came across some small paper tags that I hadn't yet coffee stained. Instead of using my usual method of instant coffee and hot water, I decided to press the tags into the coffee grounds for a unique and rustic look. The end result was a beautiful set of ephemera that I can incorporate into my junk journaling project. Happy upcycling and crafting! Going to believe this upcycled transformation of this Crown Royal bottle. Saved it out of my recycling bin, and I'm painting it with some black chalk paint around the outside, and the label I'm painting with some white chalk paint. I actually just went into my garden, got some dirt, and after that black paint had dried, I rubbed the dirt right into it. And then I went back and I painted on a little bit more black chalk paint, and I got some more dirt and rubbed it all over. We're trying to make something really spooky here. And then I sealed all of that black up with some polyacrylic sealer. Just let it drip where it wanted to, and it looks spooky. Now we're gonna put a graphic on that white label. I printed this off on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text, and used my Mod Podge mat. Let it sit for 24 hours and then rubbed off the paper with a little bit of water. Added some twine around the neck, got some dead leaves from my lawn, and this was all created from an upcycled Crown Royal bottle.
30 seconds into the shift.
I want to go home. Okay, I want a beer. I want an ice cream.
Found this glass bowl at the thrift store. We're gonna turn it into a beautiful piece of fall decor. I'm mixing up some of my homemade sand paint. If you haven't tried this, you need to give this recipe a try. It creates a really beautiful grainy stone-like finish when it's all done. I'm gonna be putting on 3 coats, letting it completely dry in between each coat. And as you layer it up, you'll see you'll get more and more texture from that homemade sand paint. It's completely dry. I love the way that it turned out. I haven't painted the inside because we're going to put some decor in it, spraying it with some polyurethane spray. I've set it on top of a candle pedestal and it's ready to display in with my fall decor. I'm going to show you how you can make a beautiful centerpiece for your fall table with just a napkin and a dollar store candle. You want to find some fall themed napkins and a dollar store candle, the pillar ones that they're usually around $3, and take the napkin down to 1 ply. You're going to cut off a piece of wax paper a little bit bigger than the candle, wrap that 1 ply of napkin around the pillar candle, and then put on the wax paper with the waxy side to the inside of the candle. I like to use a tea towel to hang on to it because it's going to get a little bit warm. Now you want to get out your hair dryer and put it on the highest setting, the highest heat, and just start heating up that wax paper with the candle in it, and the wax is going to melt and it's going to bond that napkin into the candle. And you've just made a custom candle for your fall decor. I took some of my favorite papers and fall graphics that I've made and put them together in a little junk journal so I can write down some of my thoughts through the fall season. I coffee stained all of my papers and I just put it together by stapling it and adding some ribbon as embellishments. I also tore all around the edges of the paper and I think it finished it off perfectly. Never throw out any scrap bits of wood because I'm going to show you how you can take all those little bits and pieces of wood and turn them into something beautiful. Today's project, I am making a fall themed sign. I had some scrap bits of pine and I had an old stake and I've painted them all with some black chalk paint. I'm going to give these a really rustic paint job. I'm going to layer up lots of fall colors, putting candle wax in between each layer so when we're all finished we can create that chippy finish. I've put the layers on, finished it up with some white chalk paint on the top, and now I'm scraping away, and wherever there was candle wax, that paint has not adhered and it's left a really fantastic chippy finish. Using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method to put some graphics on, I had this old rusty rake, adding some floral to it, sealing everything up with some outdoor polyacrylic sealer. I'm going to put them on the stake. This is what I created. You're not going to believe how I upcycle this small Crown Royal bottle. I am painting it with some white chalk paint and we're turning it into something really spooky. Using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method, I'm going to put some graphics on that bottle. Printed this off on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text, and we're going to use my Mod Podge mat and put it on the bottle right where the label of the Crown Royal was. We're going to set it aside, let it dry for 24 hours. I wet it with a little bit of water, rub the paper off, and we're going to be left with a really spooky graphic. Sealed it up with some polyacrylic sealer, wrapped some twine around the top, and now I'm going to get a taper candle. We're going to put it in there, light it, got a red crayon, and I'm going to let it melt and drip down that taper candle right onto that Crown Royal bottle. What a spooky upcycle using a Crown Royal bottle. Show you how I upcycled this glass dish that I found at the thrift store for 25 cents into a really cute piece of Halloween decor. Head to the dollar store, find some fun Halloween themed napkins, and we're going to use 1 ply with some Mod Podge mat. I'm applying the Mod Podge over the glass dish and then I'm decoupaging that napkin right into the dish. I love this one because it has lots of texture and it looks fantastic once I've gotten this decoupaged on. Once I have it finished, I'm taking a very fine grit sandpaper and I'm sanding off the edges of the napkin, and I want to put a piece of the napkin on the base also. Cutting off a piece, putting on the Mod Podge, and then waiting for it to dry and then sanding off the edges. And now you're ready to fill it up with some Halloween treats. I took some of my favorite Halloween graphics, printed them on some coffee stained paper, distressed the edges on some of them, and put them all together in a Halloween themed junk journal. I just punched some holes in the paper, put them all together with a little bit of ribbon. It's messy, but I love the way that it turned out. I think it's gonna look perfect displayed with my Halloween decor. I took some of my favorite Halloween graphics, printed them on some coffee stained paper, distressed the edges on some of them, and put them all together in a Halloween themed junk journal. I just punched some holes in the paper, put them all together with a little bit of ribbon. It's messy, but I love the way that it turned out. I think it's gonna look perfect displayed with my Halloween decor. I actually never throw out any scrap pieces of wood. I actually got these out of the burn pile, and I'm going to turn these into cute pumpkins, so you'll never look at a scrap piece of wood the same again. Painted these with some black chalk paint, some orange chalk paint, and then I'm going to do my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method to put graphics on these. I printed these off on my LaserJet printer and using some Mod Podge mat, let it sit for 24 hours, and then you dampen it with a little bit of water, rub off the paper. We were left with really cute jack-o'-lantern faces. I've got some branches out of my backyard, drilled a hole in the top, glued those little bits of the branches in the top, added a little bit of some raffia and ribbon to finish it off. And these scrap wood pumpkins are just so darn cute. Let's take a thrift store fake book and turn it into some really spooky Halloween decor. I painted the whole inside and the outside with some black chalk paint, and then I painted the outside with some white chalk paint, and then I got some sand and dirt and rubbed it right into that white paint to make it look yucky and dirty. Got a toothbrush and I splattered paint all over the front, spine, and the back. And now we're gonna put some graphics on. I designed these graphics and they're Book of Potions. We're gonna use the Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method, making sure to reverse your text, and I printed it with a LaserJet printer. I wanna make the pages look like they're old and vintage too, and these graphics have sat for 24 hours. I'm dampening them with some water and rubbing off the paper when we're left with spooky graphics on this fake book. After the graphics were done, I even rubbed in some more dirt, and this is how I upcycled it. I love to go to the thrift store and find lots of items that I can upcycle, and this is just a few of what I've made for the fall and Halloween season. I love creating signs on old pieces of scrap wood and using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer to do all the graphics on all of my projects, and it turns out fantastic. Some old rusty gas cans that I painted with some chalk paint, put some pumpkin faces on them, and check out these old buckets. Nothing better than a great upcycle. This is a fun upcycle. I've taken a flower vase that I found at the thrift store, and we're gonna turn it into a spooky vase for Halloween. Painted it with some black homemade chalk paint, waited for that to dry, painted some white on top of that, and then you just get out your acrylic paint and just drip. This is a fantastic project to do with the kids too. They'll have a hoot watching all that paint run down. I also like to take my heat gun and just kind of force the drips to go down a little bit more, taking a paintbrush and flicking on some paint, just making it look really spooky. Taking it outside and sealing it up with a good sealer, and then I wanted to put some spooky flowers in it. Got some branches out of my yard, sprayed them with a little bit of black spray paint to make them speckled, had some faux flowers that I speckled with some black paint also. What do you think? We all have mason jars in our stash. I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna upcycle this Halloween theme. Cleaned it up really well with an alcohol pad, put a little bit of polyacrylic sealer in the bottom of that mason jar and swirled it all around so it covered the whole inside of that mason jar. Once it was completely covered, I got out my orange glitter and I just poured some in the bottom, and I'm just swirling it around right into that polyacrylic sealer on the inside of that mason jar. It's completely covered. We're gonna set it aside and let it dry. I'm gonna do some graphics on my Cricut. I printed off this spooky graphic. We're gonna add it to the front, and we've created a really fun mason jar, Halloween style. Upcycle a glass jar from the recycling bin and make it spooky. I've got some air dry clay. I'm rolling it out about 1/4 of an inch thick. I gave my glass jar a light spritz of spray paint so the clay would adhere better, and I'm just pushing it all over the whole jar until it's completely covered. Set it aside for 24 hours, let it dry. It's gonna crack. That's exactly what we want. I then got some toilet paper and I decoupaged it so we could keep the clay all together. I printed off this poison label, coffee stained it, then I went back and I coffee stained that whole jar too on top of the decoupaged toilet paper. And then I'm going to decoupage on that label. Wanted to make the edges a little bit distressed, so I added some ink, got out my Mod Podge mat, put a light coat on the back of that label, put it on the jar, and this is what I created. I have a candlestick holder in this old candle. I am going to make it spooktacular. We're gonna take some baking soda paint and paint over that candlestick holder. Gives it a really nice textured look. When it's almost dry, I'm rubbing in some dirt. This is gonna make it look grubby and old and antique looking. Once that's dried, I took a little bit of my gold acrylic paint and just kind of brushed it on here and there. Gives it another level to that antique-y vintage feel. And then when it was completely dry, I sealed it up with some water-based polyacrylic sealer. I put my candle in the candle holder, and then I got another candle that I'm gonna hold over the flame and just let the wax melt down. Be careful, don't burn yourself, and do it somewhere where it doesn't matter if you're gonna drip a little bit of wax on your table. This is gonna make this candle look like it was in a haunted mansion. This is what I created. Throw out any scrap pieces of wood because they can be turned into really cute Halloween and fall decor. This piece of scrap wood was in the burn pile. I rescued it, and I'm going to decoupage a napkin onto it from the dollar store. Using my Mod Podge mat, I applied a little bit of Mod Podge onto the bottom, laid the napkin into it, and then I'm putting some Mod Podge on the top. We're going to set it aside then and let it dry completely, and then we're going to sand off the extra napkin around the edges, drill a hole in the top. I got a piece of a branch out of my yard, put some wood glue on it, painted it green, add some raffia. Here's another scrap wood project that's really easy to do. I've got some Vaseline. I put some Vaseline around the outside, put a layer of green, let that dry, put some more Vaseline, put some orange, put some more Vaseline, put some yellow. And then when everything was dry, I just took a rag and I wiped around the edges, and wherever there was Vaseline, it's gonna leave this chippy finish. Finished it off with a little bit of sanding, and now I'm going to add some graphics using my Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer method. Printed this off on my laser jet printer, making sure to reverse the text, putting on some Mod Podge mat, and then I'm going to set it aside and let it dry overnight. Took some water, and now I'm rubbing off all of the paper. We're left with a really cute graphic. Sealed it up with some polyacrylic sealer. I'm adding some twine on the top and some faux flowers that I picked up at the thrift store to finish it off. And I've created this cute piece of fall decor.